Today we'll be discussing about the last portion of the recovery system in our, according to our syllabus. There is one security issues involved in the last portion of unit 3, that is recovery and security. So recovery portion we have completed, and now today we'll be discussing about the security issues of the unit 3 as per our syllabus. Okay, so now there we will be studying the following topics, like as per our syllabus, we will be studying the security and integrity, security violations, authorizations and views, granting privilege, security specifications in SQL, encryptions and statistical database. All this we will be studying. Okay, one by one. May not be possible to cover it up all today. Maybe I may require 1 or 2 more classes for that. Okay, now all these security concerns will be discussed with reference to the SQL. Okay, and for the database, let us first consider the domain constraints. Already we know from our DBMS 1 knowledge what is domain constraints, that integrity constraints guard against the accidental damage to the database by ensuring that authorized changes to the database do not result in a loss of data consistency. The domain constraints are the most elementary form of integrity constraints. They test values inserted in the database and test queries to ensure that the comparisons make sense. For example, new domains can be created from the existing data types. As for example, create domain dollars numeric 12.2, create domain pounds numeric 12.2. That means it will create a domain for the dollar variable with a numeric data type with specification 12 digits and in the floating point 2 decimals point allowed. We cannot assign or compare a value of type dollars to a value of type pounds because they are not compatible. However, we can convert the type as below. Cast art.a as pounds, should also multiply the dollars to pound by conversion rates. Okay. Now domain constraints, to check the clause in SQL permits domains to be restricted. Use check command, CHECK, check command clause to ensure that an hourly wage domain allows only values greater than a specified value. For example, create domain, this is the constraint imposed using the SQL. Create domain hourly wage. Hourly wage is a numeric having the 5 digits with floating point values permissible, 2 digit floating point values permissible. Imposed constraints are constant values test check value greater than 4. That means if the inserted value for the hourly wage is less than 4, then that will not be acceptable. Okay, that is not acceptable by the system. And that is ensured by this following command: create domain hourly wage numeric constant value check, value test check greater than value greater than 4. The domain has a constant that ensures that hourly wages is greater than 4, greater than equal to 4. The clause constant, this constraint actually imposes the value test with the specified value. Can have a complex conditions also in domain check. So create domain account type character 10, constant account type test, check value in within these 2 values. That means if the account type test, account type is, so constant imposed here is to check whether the account type is lying, is having these 2 values or not. Means whether the account type is checking or savings. Means let's say checking, I can change it to saving or current account or savings account. Okay. So check branch the another example can be the check branch name in, select branch name from branch. So here the domain constraints are to impose some restrictions about the value of a particular attribute. Okay, so by this way, this create domain, account type, then data type. Constraint imposed is the account type test, check, and then the value in the list of values you can specify. This can be one way. This can be another way. Create domain, value test, check whether the value is greater than, means the greater than equal to comparison can be there for the checking as a constraint. Value in can be also be there as a constraint. Then check also can be there as select branch name in this way. So there are various ways. Now, that was the domain constraint. Okay, now coming to the referential integrity constraint. So referential integrity constraint, we have already studied that in the DBMS 1, that referential integrity constraints cannot be null. Like for example, if it is a primary key value cannot be null, and foreign key, referring foreign keys should be valid, etc. So now, so that referential integrity constraint ensures that the value that appears in one relation for a given set of attributes also appears for a certain set of attributes in another relation. Okay. Suppose, for example, if Tura is a branch name appearing in one of the tuples in the account relation, then there exists a tuple in the branch relation for branch Tura. Formal definition of this referential integrity constraint can be, let the relational tuple R1 in the relation capital R1 and R2 in capital R2 be the relations with the primary keys K1 and K2 respectively. Then the subset alpha of R2 is a foreign key. That means the subset of attributes of R2 can be the foreign key referencing key K1 in the relation R1. Okay, that means the foreign key of the R2 will be the subset of the attributes R2 sets, which is actually referring to the primary key of the relation R1. If for every T2, the tuple T2 in the relation R2, there must be a valid tuple T1 in R1 such that the foreign key attribute corresponding to the tuple T2 should have the same value of the primary key attribute K1 of the relation of the relation R1 corresponding to the tuple T1. Okay, so that is obvious. Basically, this is the usual mathematical way to represent this referential integrity constant. Now, referential integrity constant is also called as a subset dependency, since it can be written as the project alpha R2, means from R2 relation, if you project only the alpha is a foreign key basically, will be a subset of the primary key of the relation R1. Okay, so if you project the K1 from R1, K1 is the primary key of relation R1, that the foreign key will be a subset of that primary key. That is this mathematical notation indicates that. So pi of alpha of R2 will be a subset of pi of K1 of R1. Is this clear? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now referential integrity constants, we have talked about it. Let us just skip that. Now in SQL, primary and candidate keys and foreign keys can be specified as a part of the SQL create table statement. So that means these constraints can be integrated while creating a table using SQL commands like the following way. The primary key clause lists the attributes that comprises the primary key. The unique key clause also can be listed in the attribute that comprises the candidate keys, and foreign keys also can be listed during the creation of the table uh, by the SQL commands. So by default, the foreign key references the primary key attributes of the reference table. So foreign key is created as follows: foreign key account number, that means this account number is the foreign key. References account, that indicates that account number attribute is the foreign key which is referring to the relation account. Now I'll be coming to the more concrete example of this. A short form of specifying a single column as foreign key is account number character 10 reference account. Okay, so reference column in the reference table can be explicitly specified by the foreign key command, foreign key account number reference account table. So let us, in the next slide, I think we can elaborate it more. So create table customer. So when we are going to create a table customer, okay, so with the following attributes present and their particular data types. So customer table, customer name character 20, customer street character 30, customer city character 30, primary key is specified as the customer name. Okay. So here you can see that the table, while creating this table customer, these are the following attributes along with their corresponding data type. Here it is written CHAR character. It can be varchar also. Okay. Now, out of these attributes, the primary key specified here is primary key customer name. So by this command in SQL primary key, you can specify the attribute customer name as the primary key. Okay. In the similar manner, you can create a table branch with these following attributes: branch name character 15, branch city character 30, assets integer, and primary key is specified as the branch name. So here the branch name is set as the primary key by this command primary key. So now coming to the foreign key example by the SQL command in the next, create table account. So we are creating the table account with the following attributes: account number, which is having the character 10 values, branch name character 15, balance integer, primary key account number, foreign key branch name, reference branch. Okay, so here you can see that the primary key specified for this table is the account number, and the foreign key specified for this table is the branch name, which is actually referring to a relation branch. Okay, by this command foreign key branch name references. After references, it should refer to a valid relation name. Okay, so the relation or the entity set name is branch. So foreign key is here the branch name of this particular attribute, which is actually referring to the relation branch. Okay, create table depositor is another example with this following: customer name character 20, account number character 10, primary key customer name and account number. Here you can see that customer name and account both are acting as the primary key, whereas foreign key is the account number is the foreign key, references account, and foreign key is the customer name, references customer. Okay, so here you can see that create table depositor is actually referring to two relations, account and customer, and the primary keys, primary keys are the two keys which are also a foreign key of other two relations, account and customer. Okay. Is it okay?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
I think already you have started studying the Oracle, right? Both theory and
Yes, sir.
practical.
Yes, sir.
And
Yes, sir.
I hope in Oracle also you are
Yes,
practicing
sir.
all these commands, right?
Mm.
Sure, sir.
Huh? You are practicing all these
Yes, sir.
commands. Huh? You have come. Okay.
Yes, sir.
So now cascading actions in SQL: create table account, foreign key, branch name, references branch, on delete cascade, on update cascade. What does it mean by this clause cascade? Due to on delete cascade operation clause, if a delete of a tuple in branch results in a referential integrity constraint violation, to indicate that if you delete that reference, that will result to the referential integrity violation. The delete cascades to the account relation, deleting the tuple that refers to the branch that was deleted. Similarly, on update cascade is the clause with which you can ensure the referential integrity violation. Okay, cascading updates are also similar. Now coming to that, if there is a chain of foreign key dependencies across multiple relations with on delete cascade clause specified for each dependency, a deletion or updation at one end of the chain can propagate across the entire chain. If a cascading update to delete causes a constraint violation that cannot be handled by further cascading operation, the system aborts the transactions. So if there are series of such referencing, and if by delete cascade operations, if it cannot restrict the constraint violation, then the transaction will be stopped. Okay. So now, alternative to cascading, on delete set null also can be there. So that indicates that null value is a foreign key attributes which will be set to null on delete. Okay. Or on delete set default value, etc. Are you getting all this? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now coming to the triggers. Triggers also is very important. Trigger is a statement or a set of statements that is executed automatically by the system as a side effect of a modification of the database. Okay. That means whenever a database is modified, the system will execute these statements automatically. To design a trigger mechanism, we must specify the conditions under which the trigger is to be executed. Okay. First, we have to write the conditions on which the trigger needs to be executed automatically. Specify the actions to be taken when the trigger executes. So there are two main part actually for trigger execution. One is on which condition the trigger will execute, and once it executes, what actions to be taken by the trigger. These are very important mechanisms to be adopted for any trigger execution. Triggers introduced in SQL standard from SQL 1999, but supported even earlier using non-standard syntax by most databases. Now, triggers, some examples. Suppose that instead of allowing negative account balance, the bank deals with overdrafts by setting the account balance to 0. So instead of having the negative account balance, the bank deals with the overdrafts by setting the account balance to 0. and creating a loan in the amount of the overdraft, giving this loan a loan number identical to the account number of the overdraft account. The conditions for executing the trigger is an update to the account relation that results in a negative balance value. Okay, so actually this triggering actions, as I mentioned, needs two important fields. One is on which condition this trigger needs to be executed, and once executed, what actions need to be taken by the trigger. So let's consider this example that create trigger. For creating the trigger, the command is in SQL is create trigger. Then this is the trigger name. Here the trigger name is overdraft trigger. That means by this command that the system is creating a trigger with the name overdraft trigger, and that trigger is created once after the update of an account. After update an account. So after update on the account is the name of the relation. Okay, referencing new row as in row. So now these are the actions to be taken. Referencing new row as in row. For each row, what you need to do, when new row dot balance is less than 0, means new row dot balance, if it is going to be negative balance, then you are going to set it to 0. So begin atomic, insert into borrower, then select customer name account number from depositor, where n row dot account number will be equal to depositor dot account number, and insert into loan values n dot row dot account number and n dot branch number minus n dot balance. Update account, set balance to 0, where account number equal to n row account number. So by this way, and begin ends. By this way, trigger is created. This part is the conditions for trigger executions, and this part is the actions to be taken. Okay, so is this trigger covered in Oracle so far? Hello?
No,
Hello?
No, sir.
no, sir.
Not yet. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Huh? It is not covered. Okay. I think it will be covered up. Okay. Huh? It will be covered
Yes,
up
sir.
in details, and you will be doing the practicals also in Oracle. Trigger is very important. So trigger means what? Suppose whenever you are doing some update operations or something, okay. So suppose somebody books a ticket, okay, in railway train. Okay. As soon as somebody books the ticket, some trigger mechanisms should be executed such that the database should be updated with the remaining available tickets, right? As soon as some booking or cancellation is done, okay, then trigger must be invoked to reflect that change into the database. Okay, so that is the purpose of the trigger. So trigger acts with some certain predefined conditions here that you can see, that create trigger name, and this is the after update on account. After update on account means after the update on the account. It can be before update also. I'll be coming to that in the next example. Okay, so this is the condition on which the trigger needs to be invoked. And once it is invoked, the trigger is invoked, the what mechanisms to be followed is written here. Okay, I think this will be covered up in details in Oracle when it will be more clear when you will be doing the practical. Okay, and if required, I will be sharing with you some triggering example programs also. Okay, in Google Classroom. Now, some codes in SQL for triggering, I can share it in Google Classroom. Now, triggering events and actions in SQL, triggering events can be insert, delete, or update. So, as I mentioned that once the trigger is invoked, some mechanisms to be adopted. So those events are insert operation, delete operation, or update operations. Triggers on update can be restricted to specific attributes. Create trigger here in this particular example, create trigger overdraft after update of balance on account. As you can see here, the actions taken on is, this is the name of the triggering. This is the command to create the trigger, create trigger. This is the name of the trigger. Oh, sorry. This is the name of the trigger. And then after update of balance means the triggering actions need to be taken by fulfilling this condition, criteria. This criteria is after update of balance on account. Okay. So now coming to this values of attributes before and after an update can be referenced, referencing old row as for delete and updates, referencing new rows as for insert and updates. So if you see, triggers can be activated before an event, which can serve as extra constraint, that is convert blanks to null. Suppose, for example, create trigger, set null trigger. This is the name of the trigger. Before update on the relation name R, this is the name of the relation, referencing new row as n row. So new row. So row will be renamed as n row after triggering operation. Then for each row is an tuple. When n row dot phone number equal to blank, then set n row dot phone number to null. So whenever some null values, the blank values is met by the system, this triggering operation will set that phone number null value, the blank value with the null character. Is it clear? Is it okay? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So now statement level triggers also can be there. Instead of executing a separate action for each affected row, a single action can be executed for all rows affected by a transaction, single transaction. Use for each statement instead of for each row. So use for each statement instead of for each row. Use referencing old table or referencing new table to refer to temporary tables called the transaction tables containing the affected rows. Can be more efficient when they're dealing with SQL statements that update a large number of rows. So suppose a DA is announced. Okay, DA is announced and DA will be 10%. Once it is imposed, that will be effective for all the employees. So there we can write a triggering operations to reflect that changes for all the employees in their salary. Okay, adding that 10% announced DA in their salary. Okay, so purpose of this trigger, I hope it is clear. So I don't have much time left today, so I am not going to cover up the other topics today. So just to summarize what we have discussed today, we have started discussing today the integrity and security issues of the database in the third unit of the third unit. There we have discussed the domain constraints. Then we have discussed about the referential integrity constraints, and there we have seen that how we can set the primary key, foreign key values. Then we have discussed about the triggers. Okay, so how we can define a trigger, how we can invoke a trigger, what should be the conditions for invoking a trigger, and once the trigger is invoked, what should be the actions required in the triggering, that also you have discussed. So I hope it's clear to you all. If you don't, if you have any questions, you may ask me. I may invite some questions now, if you have any doubts. Hello, is there any doubt?